Weekend Breakfast with Sara-Jayne Makwala King
on CapeTalk.
On CapeTalk.
We are a country where many kids grow up without their fathers for whatever reason, carrying wounds that often last long into adulthood. I think about my siblings who grew up in Limpopo while my dad was working in Joburg. There are millions of children who experience that. I think of other people I know who there was abandonment. I think of any number of reasons why children may grow up without their father. And for some, that absence becomes part of their identity, very much shaping how they love, how they trust, how they connect with others. But what happens when the parent who missed your childhood reappears in adult life or wants access to your adult life? Does reconnection bring healing, or does it just reopen perhaps old pain, create unanswered questions? This morning we're unpacking the emotional impact of absent parents for whatever reason in childhood, and then returning years later, and whether rebuilding those relationships is truly possible, and whether that wound can be healed. We're going to be exploring boundaries, forgiveness, accountability, and the reality of healing in that situation. Joining me this morning, Raymond Weaver, who grew up without his father, and he'll explain why, and social worker at the Family Counselling Centre in Fishhook, Vizette Buertas joins us, and also via Zoom from Joburg, psychologist Jogini Packery. Good to have you back with us, Jogini. Thanks very much indeed for your time. Raymond, I'm going to start with you. What was your relationship like with your dad, and why wasn't he in your life? Good to have you with us this morning.
Thank you, Sara-Jayne. My father was there, but he worked on a container vessel. So we saw him. If it was twice a year, it was a lot. So that happened right through my growing up until I was about 18, 19. So I never had a relationship with him. But I understand only later onwards that he had to do what he had to do. You understand? But I never had that connection growing up as the father-son relationship, where I needed that guidance, all those type of stuff, and it never was there. And my mom had to do both the mom and the dad role, and the stuff that I needed to share with him that I couldn't. And that is how I grew up. But like I say, he was there, but he wasn't present in my life.
Yeah.
Only later onwards, and that also had almost like a snowball effect as to how I grew up, how I saw what this man is supposed to look like.
So interesting.
But that was a.
As a child, what was your understanding of why your dad wasn't there?
My understanding from early on was he needed to provide for us as a family.
Right.
Yeah. So I understood, and I grew up with that. Okay. Because it came from an authority figure, from your parent, it must be right. You understand? You only later on, like I said, hindsight is a good thing. So I only realized later that it's not supposed to be like that, of a good family setting or a better family setting. It's not supposed to be like that, but I understood why he did what he did.
Yeah.
And when we finally came and retired from what he used to do, he didn't reach out to me, how you guys doing, and stuff like that. I had to initiate conversation as to ask questions that I never got answers from him.
Yeah.
So that was a bit tough on me.
How do you think your dad's absence, for whatever the reason was, impacted you as a child and then impacted you as an adult? How do you think it shaped your identity? How did it shape how you view fatherhood and how you show up as a father? I mean, am I allowed to ask what you do for a living?
Yeah.
And what do you do?
I'm now a mentor at a character company. So we mentor fatherless boys.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah. How do you think that absence affected, I suppose, little Raymond and then bigger Raymond?
Yeah. So in my early childhood, as I grew up and I saw this absence of my father. So people that modeled fatherhood and mentorship, I met playing soccer in sports. When I got involved in sports and stuff like that, there was always somebody teaching me or guiding me or whatever. But then afterwards, growing up, you always, like I said, there was a disconnect between because you see your other friends, his dad is there, where's my dad? And you ask these type of questions, and you didn't necessarily get it. You try to figure out, okay, maybe it's right like that. You try as you go along, you learn as you go along. But then you see, okay, this actually had a detrimental effect when it comes to me having relationships with maybe the opposite sex, because now this is what is being murdered to me or modeled to me. So this must be correct because it comes from an authoritative figure.
Yeah.
And so that even affected my marriage as to when it comes to affection. I had my wife now, she's a very affectionate person. And so I couldn't relate to what is this type of thing, because there was always an absence from my father's perspective. So there was always this distance between us because of that. And like I said, the transition from boyhood to manhood was very difficult for me because I never knew how to approach the opposite sex. And there was always this loss of or sense of belonging. I needed to belong to somewhere. And the culture in itself, in our culture, that formed my perspective as to this is what man is supposed to look like. And that was the wrong thing. I only found it out later. Yeah. You understand? And so that is how I grew up with that disconnect. And it filtered down into my marriage because I was there, but I wasn't present. Yeah. And I always told myself, when I have kids one day, I don't want to be like what I saw by my father being absent, even though he provided, but he was absent. So I told myself, and while in my married life, my daughter, I was so, what is the word now? one evening, inebriated, and I told myself, I don't want to be like my dad. And here my daughter look at me, I'm like broken. Because I looked for connection other places where I couldn't find it in my own household. And I told myself, I'm exactly turning out to be like my father. And I realized I'm going to hurt my own child if I don't set things straight. Sure. You need to look at myself earnestly in the mirror and say, is this what you want to model to your own children? Yeah. And that is where the change started. So
interesting. Thanks so much for being so honest about that. Vazette, good to have you with us. Thanks very much indeed for joining us. What does parental absence during childhood do to a child emotionally and psychologically?
Big question. Good morning, Sara-Jayne and all your listeners. Yes, Raymond and I spoke a little bit before we came on, and it is such an interesting thing because it sets you up for life. Yeah. It sets you up for life. And for children, that experience of that lack, Brene Brown talks about the story you make up in your head. Yeah. But for children, it is completely the story they make up in their head because there's no one there. That person is absent. And they rely on the memory or the experiences told about the father or the mother that hasn't been there. And what is told gets shaped. So if a parent tells the child about the things that hurt them in the relationship, then it just gets transferred to the child, and the expectations then just becomes like, why did he leave me? Yeah, he left me because that's the way he is. Meanwhile, he may or may not be the way that he is or she is, because you only have the stories that you either stitch together by yourself from what you hear from other people, or the little bits of memory that you do have about the times that they were there. But identity, as you've mentioned, but identity across gender is also very important, because the validation that a father gives to a daughter and a father gives to a son is essential but different. And the validation that the mom gives to a daughter and the mom gives to a son, essential but different. So if you don't have a father and you're a girl, you're like, who's the first person that tells me I'm beautiful? Who's the first person that sees, oh my goodness, you're turning into a teenager, young woman, and that protection, but also that validation of you are beautiful, you're strong, I'm here for you. You don't have that, or you go look for someone to fill that space. And for boys, that the masculine stereotype becomes predominant, and there's not a relationship or the relationship stories that challenge that's getting internalized, and that will carry on into adulthood.
What we talk a lot these days about attachment styles, I suppose, and that's how we come to sort of interpret a lot of things. What attachment patterns are commonly develop in children who experience an absent parent?
It depends a lot about the present parent as well.
Oh, interesting.
Very interesting. Because the absent parent isn't actually there to influence.
Right.
So it's actually the parent that remains that has a very strong influence about the attachment styles. But attachment styles get set pretty much by the age of 3, and then you figure out how to replicate it throughout your life. So it's challenging. So how parents show up in those first 1,000 days are really, really a very big template for how relationships will work.
Yeah.
But we do see, in terms of if the family was very violent or if there was a lot of craziness, especially also in the relationship, you might have a disorganized attachment. You can't figure out relationships. If care was mixed with abuse, was mixed with neglect, or care was just absent, you as a child don't have any coherent way to figure out how relationships work. But it could also be avoidant, where that emptiness is just the thing, and you come to a conclusion as a very young child, I'm it for my life, so I've got to protect myself, I've got to sort out what I need, and you become this very independent person. Or the ambivalent attachment style, saying my attention seeking will secure someone in my life, and then they replicate that attention seeking, and that's, if we think about anyone in relationships, you will settle for anything that looks like love if you don't really know it.
Yeah, for sure. Gosh, heavy stuff this morning. We're talking about what happens when a child grows up without a parent. We're talking fathers in this instance, but we're not obviously not just talking about fathers, either parent. What happens when a child grows up without a parent, and then that parent re-enters their life in adulthood? I want to bring in to the conversation psychologist at Jogini Packery now to talk about the adult part of that. Jogini, good to have you with us on the show again. Are there signs in adulthood that point back to unresolved childhood abandonment?
Good morning, Sara-Jayne,
Hi.
and to the weekend breakfast listeners. It's lovely to be back with you all. There's definitely signs. There's signs in how we process our thoughts and feelings, so how internally peaceful we're able to be in our adulthood. But essentially, our early childhood relationships set that internal blueprint for relationships. So where we're seeing patterns in challenges to build and maintain healthy relationships in adulthood, that already is a clear sign that we have to go back and we have to look at what perhaps in that foundation of connections was not strongly developed.
What emotions typically resurface when an absent parent reappears in adulthood?
It can be a time of turmoil, especially in adulthood when you become a parent yourself. It highlights a lot. You might find that a role model doesn't always mean someone you aspire to be to. Sometimes, like it was said earlier, it's knowing what I don't want to be, especially when I then transition into that role of a parent. And also, I suppose, just looking at moving into adulthood and highlighting, is it confusion? Am I struggling to understand how to take this next step? Sometimes there's a lot of anger. Like you said earlier also, it can impact your understanding of your person as a being. Am I worthy enough? And if you're moving through the world, engaging in new relationships with that doubt in your mind, you're constantly seeking validation rather than seeking connection. And that, unfortunately, does leave you vulnerable to people taking advantage of you, people using you and abusing you.
Yeah. Raymond, you mentioned that when you were an adult and when your dad kind of did come back when you were in your late teens, that there were a lot of unanswered questions and not much gap filling from your dad. What did that look like? Was there any, and I say accountability, and I don't mean, it's not that he was to blame. He was away doing what he believed was the thing that fathers do, and he was providing. But I'm imagining that he was of a generation where sitting down and talking about your feelings and saying, how did what I do affect you, Raymond, was probably not the way that he approached things. So what did that look like when he kind of came back into your life?
when he came back into my life, it was difficult to put the pieces together or the puzzle together because he was not somebody approachable. Because I grew up, like I say, most of the question that I had to ask my mom. And when he eventually appeared, he was very distant. And that made the person uncomfortable. Whenever you had issues or you ever had concerns, you need to share this with my dad because I want to get married one day. What will his advice be to me and stuff like that? And it was a very difficult situation to navigate through. But I could understand later onwards why he was the person that he was, because when I look back into his history, I saw, okay, here's the gaps. Okay, it's a cycle that every time perpetuates itself. And so I grew up with that. Okay, fine, I see this gap. How do I then connect the dots? And so, like I said, my coaches and managers of soccer teams, I usually used to gravitate towards them and they would guide me. And like I said, it was difficult building that relationship with my dad. Because he was a person that he just kept to himself. Yeah. When he came out of work, you would see him at the back with his newspaper and one of the news and stuff is like that. That's it. We didn't have that conversations that I wanted. Yeah. And I had to initiate from my side the stuff that I wanted to hear from him. And when I didn't get that, I would then numb the pain somewhere else.
Yeah.
You see, because why is my dad not talking to me? Why can't he share what I need to know from a dad's perspective? Why can't he share that stuff? And so, like I said, I needed to numb that pain. It was difficult. And like I said, because of cultural influence as well. You just go with the flow because everybody does it. Yeah. And that is where you lost a little bit of track when you in adulthood, and then you go off track because of that disconnect.
Does that come in there?
Yes, I really so resonate with what you're saying, Raymond, because you said what I needed. But there's a real big story here, because have you ever been in a relationship that you got lost in? You don't know how to get back. You've lost your way and you don't know how to get back. I think the quintessential I don't know how to get back is a parent that lost connection with their child in childhood, and there's longings but they don't know what's the way back.
Sure.
So there's two directions with that. I think there, importantly, is the thing that there's mismatched needs. From the child's side, the things that I need, but from the parent side, the things that I need. So let me say, a father may feel, look, I missed all of the opportunity to give input, to help make decisions, or to discipline, or to guide, according to that male role. Yeah. Now they come back. Now they want to guide. Now they want to discipline. Now they want to say when you're right and when you're wrong. Yeah. And you go, you weren't here.
That ship has sailed.
Yeah, you weren't here. And that's their need, but your need. So there's lots of sensitivity and curious compassion needed when you have to reconnect.
Jogini, I want to come back to you and just ask about expectations and also about accountability, because again, can healing happen, or rather, how important is accountability from the absent parent in the reconciliation and healing process?
I think it's quite challenging, because one of the most difficult parts of adulthood can be mourning not only the parent we didn't have, but also the parent we imagined and we hoped for. So there's that reconciliation that needs to happen in our minds, within ourselves. It's also important to understand that if you're choosing to build a relationship with a parent who was absent in childhood, you're getting to know a real person, not the parent you imagined for all of these years. And you have to go in with that mind space to allow discovery rather than expecting them to immediately fill that role that was missed as a child. So that means we're not trying to reconnect what didn't happen in childhood, but we're trying to focus on what kind of relationship can be possible now rather than trying to recover lost time. So it is okay to talk about difficult feelings, the hurt, the feeling of not feeling worthy, not belonging, not knowing where you belong, like not having an anchor in your personhood, which is big challenges that even teenagers building identity need to navigate, but rather asking the difficult questions within healthy spaces. Having that healthy reconnection does require both openness and boundaries to protect.
Yeah.
Too open can leave you vulnerable. Too boundaried can leave you, unfortunately, closed off to the world. And then, two more scenarios, Sara-Jayne, is sometimes an adult child chooses not to pursue that relationship because having the parent come back in has been detrimental to their own peace and their own happiness. So not every relationship is healthy simply because it's biological. Adults have to make that decision. Does this relationship, like any other relationship, serve my safety, my well-being, my emotional health? It's almost like freeing yourself from carrying that emotional burden. But then on the flip side of that, not every adult child has that opportunity because sometimes parents have passed away.
Yeah, that's true. Before we wrap up, I just want to ask if there are people listening in who are the consistent. I'm not saying that the absent parent's always but the parent who is there. Was there any words of advice or suggestions for the parent who is present in terms of how they talk about or explain the absence of the other parent? Because little big people often want to know how do we, and you talked about how we make up our own stories. How can we make sure that story, or do our best to make sure that the story that our kids are telling themselves in absentia of the other parent is the healthiest one possible, while not sugarcoating it?
Yes,
because that's the other thing, isn't it? Is that we can go, oh no, of course they love you, and it's like,
it's not true.
That's not what love looks like, right? How do we do that?
So the parent that remains have got an absolutely pivotal role to play in the life of that child. So if you are consistent, if you are warm and caring, and if you present the other parent not only in one singular light, either all good or all bad, so that there could be realities in it. So when parents, there's many reasons why relationships fail. If you talk to your children from the place of your pain and explain the things that went wrong, but there's never an alternative story to that, they grow up with a picture that doesn't really reflect the truth, because there was a time that it was different. So I would want to say, for parents that have to start a new conversation, try these words, because we sometimes project a singular view. Say something like, there was a time that your dad and I really liked each other. There was a time when you came into this world, he was so excited, she was so excited, we had our challenges, but we loved you. And your dad, your nose is just like your dad's. And I really like that from him right from the start, because that is a process of connecting the other half of your personhood. So that one, and even for the parent returning, not making the other parent out as a complete rubbish, because they were there at least, but to say, there was a time, and I wanted to be there. I couldn't for what, but there was a time where I really was connected to you in whichever way.
Really important stuff. Thank you very much indeed. We're going to have to wrap up there, but what a powerful conversation. I appreciate it. Thanks very much indeed, Raymond Weaver, sharing his experience for us. Vizette Buertas from the Family Counselling Centre in Fishhoek, and also psychologist Jogini Packery, who joined us on the line from Joburg via Zoom. Thank you very much indeed all for your time.